Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our very first, GNS live session. I'm Katy Hendricks. This is Nicholas Love. He is our digital rock star in residence. And if you've been following us at all on our social channels or our blog, we've been talking about digital transformation for a while. We've been doing it a lot internally, a lot externally, and a lot of that is driven by Nick and his vision for the agency and what he's been putting in practice for our clients. So, as we said in the intro, get ready to drop some gems. I am always a personal fan of when Nick speaks, whether it's virtually or in person. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get started. So, Nick, would love for you to tell our audience, what does digital transformation mean to you?
At its core, people instinctively have a tendency to really just align it singularly with digital, right?
Hmm.
But at its core, it's really a radical rethinking of how you approach digital, which as an end result, right, can create some new business lines for you fundamentally, right? Because it has the opportunity to really certainly expose um, uh, points of differentiation that you can introduce into the market, right? I think, really when you start to look at digital transformation from a core competency or a pillar perspective, right? I like to really align it with four pillars, right?
Hmm.
People, process, culture, and data, right? From a people perspective, right? Having the right talent to execute at the level that not only maintains a competitive advantage in the marketplace, but drives a continued innovative thinking in how they approach their respective work. Process, right? This idea of continuously being intellectually curious, right? Making incremental investments towards achieving sustained engagement with your target audience. Culture, and this is big, and we'll certainly talk about this a little bit later, right? Um, when you talk about digital transformation, it can't necessarily happen in a siloed way, right? And so, being able to have that commitment from the top and from the bottom, and certainly allowing those two areas to right, to meet and merge with this innovative mindset, and feeling like it's embraced or free to kind of operate within that mindset is key. And then ultimately data, right? Real-time behavioral data on customers to really tailor an experience to their individual wants and needs, right? We live in an on-demand world, an on-demand society, right? And so certainly the opportunity to create personalized experiences and interactions certainly allows you from a business perspective to really move your respective target audiences through the various funnels. Ultimately, pre-COVID, right, it was identified as a nice to have, right? Certainly something that if you had the time or if you had the budget, you could kind of tap into this concept of digital transformation. Right now, it's imperative.
Yeah.
It's critical, right? And if you as an organization have not, really been investing and emphasizing, how you navigate certain things in this virtual world, right? You're going to be at a disadvantage. And so right now it means taking a step back and really evaluating, things within the four pillars that I mentioned earlier, and having tough conversations about what the future looks like for you, right? And ultimately organizations who can really align on this thinking on those respective points are going to be better suited for tomorrow than those who aren't taking it serious right now.
Yeah. I love how you break it down into the four pillars: people, process, culture, and data. Where do companies start? Like, what starting point do you say you need to do this first?
Culture, without a doubt. No, no, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Because ultimately that culture is going to influence the respective approach or the thinking into those other respective pillars,
Yeah.
right? And so, whether you're a CEO, a CMO, a CCO, a project manager, a strategist, a director, a manager, an administrative assistant, right? Like it has to be embedded in the fabric of your respective organization. And change isn't easy, right? If
No.
you're not there, there will undoubtedly, be some friction, right? Certainly, there's a lot of alignment, and I've talked about this in the last article, right, with digital transformation and change management, right? You're going to go through various different phases. I like, sometimes you'll deal with a storming phase, right, where
Mhm.
everyone may not necessarily be bought in, right? They don't necessarily understand the vision. There might be misalignment happening. And I think it's really key for your leaders, for your visionaries, to really be able to paint a clear picture of why we're doing this, what we can expect to happen as a result of doing this, right? Where we're looking to go, right?
Mhm.
And certainly, understanding that you're going to have multiple audiences during this respective journey, right? You're going to have the audience that has, strong, intuitive, instinctive digital sensibilities, right? Who's ready to rock it out, right? Then you're going to have an audience, right, who may not necessarily inherently understand, what it's going to take, right? But they're on board to
Mhm.
be taught or to be coached, right? And then you're going to have another audience, right, who they might say, well, why are we changing, right? The old way
Mhm.
worked perfectly, right? And that's the audience, right? You're going to have to spend some time, really investing in a few different pillars, right? One is this, creating an understanding that we're willing to invest, we're willing to be patient, right? If you're willing to put the work in.
Right.
Now, if you're not willing to put the work in, that's a different conversation for another Facebook Live. I would love to have our head of human resources on that conversation, right? But certainly, creating an understanding that you're willing to invest time and resources and allowing them to kind of mitigate those respective gaps and close those knowledge gaps, because the burden can't be on those who have instinctive or intuitive experience or knowledge or sensibilities within the digital space, right? Because the thing about digital is it changes all the time, right? And so you have to be agile, you have to be nimble to be able to really adjust in this world, because it's something that is continuously evolving. The technology that we've known, 12 months ago is outdated, right? And so you have to understand that you got to stay ahead of the curve. And so, transformation, at its core, and this would be my last point, right? It is really about transforming your organization's approach to what they do, what they sell, how they think. And
Mhm.
so, really creating that vision and that shared collective understanding is critical, right? When we talk about culture and the implementation and execution of that vision.
It's so much more than buy-in, I think is what we're saying here today. It's so much more than, you know, just talking and hoping someone will listen. It's a true cultural shift at every single level of the organization.
Exactly. Exactly.
Great. So let's shift it for a bit and talk a little bit about what companies should look for in an agency. What are the characteristics that you should expect your agency to bring to the table?
Swag. Period. Right. I spend a lot of time talking about the importance of being a T-shaped marketer, right?
Hmm.
And there's a level of confidence, right, that comes with being a T-shaped marketer, right? There's a level of swag that comes in, and how you articulate, how you think, operating as a T-shaped marketer, right? And so when you operate within that framework, right, there's an understanding that you have deep vertical expertise in a particular specialty area, right? But you have horizontal expertise, right? You have an understanding of how that area of expertise can integrate into those respective areas, right? Because it then starts to allow you to have a perspective. And so when we talk about biz comms at practice, right, at GNS, right, we talk about having an informed point of view. And ultimately, having that informed point of view is not exclusive to the industry or the vertical that they're focused on, right? But also is about the discipline in which they operate within, right? And so, being able to, come at it from that T-shaped perspective allows you to kind of drive the rigor that's necessary. And what that rigor does is that it starts, when you start to have those brainstorming sessions and those ideation sessions and even conversations with your respective clients, right? It starts to kind of give you a level of confidence that you want to be able to build or birth respective ideas to their maximum potential. And so that's critical for companies to look at when they're trying to identify an agency. Another thing that you want to look for outside of swag is agility, right? How well are they able to pivot, adjust, and challenge, or adjust to the respective challenges that they're facing, right? And so, again, earlier I talked about digital as an ever evolving discipline. And so, what you might have been banking on yesterday, you might need to adjust. And their ability to show demonstrated results, demonstrated tendencies on being able to build on those respective successes or adjust to them is critical, right? I talk to my team all the time about being allergic to the plateau. You can't rest on the laurels of a previous successful campaign because things change and you got to be able to adjust to it. Third, you want a partner, right? And you want an agency, right, who is going to push you, right? And they're going to feel comfortable in pushing you because they have the demonstrated expertise to say, well, listen, best practices show this, our experience shows that. Here are some things that you want to consider in the event that you're not necessarily aligning. Because if they're doing exactly what you're telling them to do, and the way that you're telling them to do it, do you really have a partnership?
I love that, Nick. Yeah.
You really need to spend the money that you're going to have to spend.
Right. I mean, when you talk about pushing yourselves and pushing others, that's actually a topic we're going to be talking about in this next month is pushing boundaries. How do you break out of that mold, right? Like, how do you take the knowledge that you have over the past few months, even that has transformed you and really push the envelope there? Um, I just want to remind our audience we are going to do a little bit of time for Q&A after this. So if you got some questions, write them down and we'll read them out and we can answer them. Uh, Final question from me is I want to get tactical for a minute. Let's talk about how you actually put digital transformation into practice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I can give you a long answer, but I would certainly invite our audiences to kind of take a look at the two blog articles that I've released. I'll give you an example, right, of
Okay.
how we were able to kind of transform, the people, the process, the culture, and the data, right? So I certainly had a fortunate opportunity to walk into a room, and we were looking to kind of deploy a campaign, and what we used to kind of pivot this respective campaign was we merged social listening with artificial intelligence, right, to help identify topic clusters that were being discussed online, right? What were the issues that our target audiences were experiencing? And we began to kind of craft some long form content that starts to speak to those particular issues. We introduced an 8-part episodic content series where we were leveraging video to kind of drive deeper understanding and opportunities to really consume additional content. We leveraged social listening to really influence our advertising from a keyword targeting perspective, right? And then started to kind of incorporate tests where we wanted to see how how certain keywords were performing against standard approaches. And so, as a result of this thinking and really, changing our process to campaign development, changing the types of data points that we were looking for, maximizing the type of technology that we have, right, and really invigorating, some of the people who were tasked with the project, right, we were able to, create some incremental lift and some of the results that we were actually able to drive. And so it's a great case study on our website, right? It's called Weeds Waking Up.
Hmm.
And one of the more proud campaigns that I've had an opportunity to be a part of. I like to call it gumbo. we took a lot and we took a lot of things and kind of mixed it together and really arrived at some great results.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of my favorites as well. I want to turn it over to our audience to just see if there's any questions at all that you have for Nick or for me. I'll give you a couple minutes. And while we're doing that, Nick, while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions for us, any final points you want to make share?
Yeah, no, I think we've heard that we're in unprecedented times, and I think I would say hashtag big facts to that. And
Yeah.
I think the reality of that statement, right, is loaded in a lot of different layers. But the one thing that I would say is that because we're in unprecedented times, right, there are new conversations that are happening, right? There are new milestones that are being hit. We are very much in a read and react and survive and advance, right, kind of thought process. And so I think it's very, very critical that when you're in these campaign or brainstorming discussions, right, that you embrace rigor that might come to the table. You
Yeah.
embrace the thinking that ideas are better when they compete, and when you challenge on the premise of the idea, not necessarily the individual, right? Because you need that rigor around those respective ideas, because the news feed or the email inbox or or your search activity or however you might be looking to consume and acquire information is incredibly competitive right now. And so that rigor to be able to kind of break through the noise, create those slow scroll experiences, right, maximize channel effectiveness is key. And so you need agencies, you need a culture to be able to drive that rigorous thinking to ultimately deliver the best end result possible. So really be patient, as you're thinking about how you adjust to the new norms that we're in.
Yep. All right. We've got 3 questions. So I'm going to start with the first one. What are some of the most common missteps in approaching digital transformation?
Lack of alignment. Lack of
Hmm.
alignment. I mean, I stated in one of my articles, right? Failed digital transformation, happens not because the strategies are not necessarily robust, but it's because the culture is not willing to adopt the thinking of that respective strategy. And so that's, earlier I talked about culture being critical, right? And that is why it's very important that if you're driving transformative change across your company, your agency, your business, wherever it may be, right? That you have alignment, that you have investment, you have a shared vision, right? Vision is singular, leadership is plural, and you have
Hmm.
multiple people who are willing to advocate for that change. And if you have a group, right, that is resistant to that change and everyone is aligned towards it, right, then you need to start to really have some interesting conversations around what that looks like for the future.
Yep. Uh, Second question. How do you keep the team members motivated and excited in a world of constant change? Oh my gosh, I know that we are dealing with that just like everybody else. I mean, there has been relentless change in the past 5 months alone. So, what's your answer for that, Nick?
I might not answer it in the most PC way. um, I think, earlier I talked about swag, right?
Yeah.
And so, there are some characteristics and extendable traits that come with swag. And one of those things, right, is this idea of being, of loving the taste of success and wanting more of that. And so, if you instinctively love the taste of winning and you want more of it, if you instinctively can stand on unstable ground with firm legs, right? If you have the ability to jump out and swim stronger, right, when the waves get tough, right? That's not something that I need to do as a manager, as a leader, right? That is an
Right.
inherent trait. Now, how you allocate that energy, right? That's where your management and your leadership kind of comes in to ultimately make sure that you're on a pathway that's healthy for the organization that you're within. But I used to coach in women's college basketball, and my former boss Teresa Weatherspoon, who is an NBA Hall of Famer now, she used to say, if I need to get you excited about a rivalry game, you are in the wrong locker room. If I need to get you excited for exceeding the expectations that you have, we're misaligned. And so ultimately, those are some of the tendencies and characteristics that I look for.
Yep. I'd also add to that and just even what we've seen over the past few months, listen and adapt. I think what's been so important for us is to listen to our own people externally. That would be social listening. Internally, it's simply just asking and letting people bring their voice, say what they have to say, and then adapting as you need and being comfortable with that friction that's just bound to happen. I think this year is all about friction. Hopefully, when we're done with this year, it's going to feel good. We're all going to feel light and free. But right now, we are experiencing some of that. But that's the kind of friction we need to change. So, final question on here is what kinds of, speaking of change, what kinds of longer term behavioral changes should we anticipate due to the pandemic, specifically as it relates to digital transformation?
Yeah, I think that, there might be a merger of some of the old school techniques, right, and new school thinking, right? And
Hmm.
so I think, at its core, um, experience continues to be critical, right? And earlier I talked about that we live in an on-demand society. And so each touch point represents a unique experience that you have. And from a behavioral perspective, understanding the differences or the nuanced behavioral differences on a per channel platform, per channel basis is going to be critical. And so, I mean, to Katie, if I could kind of piggyback on the last statement that you made in terms of listening, it's listening with all different senses that you have,
Yeah.
and really being able to start to cater, at a much deeper level, right, than what we've had before, right? I can see a situation where, augmented reality starts to, really emerge with really more personalized experiences. So, based off of the information or the data that's available to marketers to ultimately customize that so that it feels like it's a one-on-one interaction.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, got another question. With the speed of change, it can cause paralysis. I know we've all seen that. What do you see as the first step a company should take to ensure digital transformation moves forward and is a success when you're thinking about how to get over that hump of paralysis? I know we talked about culture in a little bit in the beginning, but maybe we can expand upon that.
Yeah, no, I would certainly say culture again, becomes a critical play here, right? And I think that, when you talk about change management, right, it's really really critical to kind of align with those seminars. And certainly,
Mhm.
I shared an article that I'd love for you guys to visit on gscommunications.com, around how digital transformation is very much aligned with change management. But I think it first and foremost understanding the vision, and people aligning with that respective vision. And sometimes that might, how you craft that vision, right, might need to be a little bit different from how you've developed go-to-market strategies previously, right? Maybe it's about, having the collective buy-in, or the collective participation in how you craft those certain things. That way, people feel as if they are empowered to contribute, right? They are empowered to challenge some of the concepts and the ideas, that they are empowered to bring in, different layers of thinking that may not necessarily have been in the room previously, so that they are actively engaged and also involved. And ultimately, again, vision is singular, leadership is plural. And so if you can bring people along that pathway, right, now you're starting to create a culture of inclusivity. Right
Yep.
now, you're starting to create that culture and those behavioral patterns, right, of people feeling like they're a part of it, to be able to take that step with you as opposed to behind you. And that's a different mindset. So that's how I would answer that question. Is really really harping on culture, really really harping on having conversations, being open, right, listening to some of the challenges and some of the ideas, because it's critical to kind of get ultimate buy-in.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Well, we wanted to keep this to right about 25 minutes, and we are right here, right on time. So, thank you so much, Nick, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in and listening in. And we hope you like it, and we will plan to be back. All right. Bye, everybody.